Welcome to All Things Chiropractic.
Welcome to another episode of All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
I'm Dr. Mark Davini.
And we have some awesome, very special guests, good friends of ours, Dr. Jen.
Doubly special.
Yeah, they are. Dr. Jen and Dean DePice. Welcome.
Hey,
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I like this radio voice you got going on.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I try, bring it down an octave, Yeah. Are you trying to say it's really squeaky
this one is
when I
my
talk
voice
to you?
down an octave.
Although we've known you for a while now, I'm excited to dig in a little bit and get to know you a little bit more. So, Dr. Jen, we always like to ask our guests first, what is their chiropractic story? Why and how did you become a chiropractor? And if you could tell us that.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I had no exposure to chiropractic all growing up, all through high school, through college until my senior year in college. And it was really because my mom had a car accident and went to a chiropractor that I found out that my grandmother had gone to a chiropractor like so many decades before that I'd never even heard about. I lived literally 5 minutes from the New York chiropractic school when I was on Long Island. Never saw the word, never saw a practice, never heard about it. My brother is a preventative health MD, and just was never in my mindedness that it existed. And my mom said, you have to go see this female DC on Long Island when you're home on Christmas break. And I did. And immediately she told me, don't go to physical therapy school, go to chiropractic. You can do more. You can be independent and care for patients in the way you want to. I was in college in North Carolina. I went to one weekend. I went to a DE philosophy seminar at Life. And I heard the philosophy and I said, wow, this really is resonating with me, even though I had nothing that told me to go for that, but it made sense to me philosophically. And I just switched my gears and showed up in chiropractic school and had gotten a couple adjustments on different breaks, but it was very short experience. But it really was a transformational experience for me and for my family as a result of going to that.
So I have to ask, you mentioned that your brother is an MD. So
Yeah.
What was his opinion when you decided to become a chiropractor?
Well, he was very, very steeped in his medical background. He graduated from Johns Hopkins. He had a PhD, master's in public health before he went to medical school. So he was very reluctantly embracing that I was doing something. He was celebrating that I wanted to do something, but very cautious about what the scope of chiropractic could do. My brother, just for a little bit of a side note, has a very debilitating condition of rheumatoid arthritis and scleroderma. He's had every joint in his body replaced, many of them more than once. Takes very many medications every single day. So as years have gone on, he's become a little bit more open to chiropractic, not much, but a little bit. But that, sometimes family is the biggest challenge for us to
Which is kind of interesting too, right? When you think about it, he's an example of medical failure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They manage it. Certainly they've kept him going, but in essence, he has a condition that medicine can't do a single thing for.
Nothing.
And all they can do is deal with the outcomes of it. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as years have gone on, there's been a little bit of an opening. Like he sent me his x-rays and I got to analyze the x-rays and say, you know what? You have some luxations in these areas. This would be helpful for you. But yeah, it's a challenge. And
it's a heavy boulder, but you did budget and you did move it a little bit. So that's pretty impressive.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing that. So Dr. Dean, same to you.
Why? Wait, I'm going to rename my brother-in-law now, Brother Boulder.
Yeah. So what's your chiropractic story, Dr. Dean?
I've been getting adjusted since I was pretty much born. I was the third of three kids, and my mom went through an illness prior to having me that led her to chiropractic. Chiropractic changed her life. She decided once I was born, she was going to raise me differently. I had one of the pediatric vaccine shots, got sick, and she was done with that. So I never had any further vaccines. Anything that the doctors asked her to do to me, she first went to the chiropractor to see if he would do it to his kids. So by the time I was being raised, I was getting adjusted all the time. If I got a fever, I went to the chiropractor. I got the measles, I went to the chiropractor. I got the chicken pox, I went to the
Talk about how you
chiropractor.
would like take the 5 cents
Yeah.
or whatever.
So at the time, it was Dr. Michael Sabia Sr., and he was about a 2 mile walk from my house. So we used to, as kids, know that my mom kept a paper envelope in her dresser drawer in our row home. And you'd walk sideways in their bedroom to be able to open the drawer. And this envelope hopefully always had at least one $5 bill in it, was because that envelope was for the chiropractic visits. And she wanted all of us at least once a month to get to the chiropractor. So you go to the drawer, you pull out your $5 bill, you go walk 2 miles down to Dr. Sabia's office, and you would wait usually between 2 and 6 hours.
Wow.
All right. To get in, because there were just lines of people, and you get adjusted, and then you walk back home. And so that's been my life. So when it came time for college and other things, I was involved in a whole different aspect of life. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to completely change everything. And I turned my life from classical music away onwards to get my Bachelor of Science degree. I double majored in biology, chemistry. I minored in nutrition, went to chiropractic school, and I've been hog wild on this lifestyle. Like, chiropractic shapes how I make decisions in all other areas of my life now. Not to met Jenny Jean.
I was
It's
just going to
interesting.
ask
You
that.
had mentioned it a little bit, but I don't think people are aware what an accomplished musician you are.
No, he definitely does not make the.
He doesn't make that very well known, but you are quite the musician from what I understand.
Well, it's funny, social media does its job on pulling things here and there. Recently, I saw a few videos pop up of Andre Segovia, and they were obviously doctored videos because it was a long time ago. But yes, when I won my accolades and whatnot back then, I got to shake hands with Andre Segovia in Manhattan. I got to play at the Carnegie Recital Hall, Alice Tully Hall for different concerts and whatnot. But yes, classical music. But you know what? I believe God had, as always, there's absolute plan. And that classical rigor, that classical discipline, that classical structure, and that the inherent passion that it takes to take, rigid, structured classical music and make it something unique, because the heart and the passion, the soul of the deliverer changes that music while not changing the notes. All of that applies to what I now bring to the chiropractic profession. So thank
Mhm.
you.
Yeah, and that impressed me when I first heard your story. That part of it right there, that people don't understand the discipline and
Mm.
the focus that's required to do what you did, and then applying that to what you do makes a huge difference. And if we can get some of the younger doctors to understand that it's all about that connection, that touch, that vibration that you create with people. So I was greatly impressed by that story when I first heard it. So I had to make sure people heard it.
Can I say something on that? Because you say about the younger generation, which we are all about raising up that younger generation to be in love with the structure of chiropractic. And it's really incumbent on the older generation to live out that desire and that passion and willingness to work really hard at the structure, because otherwise the younger generation won't have the mentors. They won't have the model that shows you can be profitable and sustainable in practice for decades and do it and enjoy your life if they don't see that model done. So they won't have the desire to work really, really hard if they are not seeing doctors who care to mentor them.
Yeah.
So dare we say that might be a motivation behind the formation of TLC?
Just a little bit.
Yeah. I was just on the phone with a student now in ninth quarter at chiropractic school, and just mentoring how he can make choices about whether to come out and associate, or whether to come out and associate and then independent contractorship and then open, or whether to come out and associate and just open, or whether to come out and immediately open. But how do you steward wisdom in that decision making in that trail? You can do it on your own, and there's always exceptions. There's people that just defy the odds and do everything right.
Well,
Or there's people that really are well served to be stewarded properly. So yeah, we were that exception.
Yeah, we did it on our own for 1 month, and then we said, "That's it. We're gonna be in a community."
Yeah.
But don't you
So
find that today that the movement is toward more group practices, more corporate practice, more larger organizations involving chiropractic than just the single practitioner?
That's
You
tough.
go, Dan.
Um, I think that there is a trend towards that. I don't think that that's the general philosophy of students now getting out of chiropractic school. I think that they have the belief that they can open on their own and do everything on their own. So I don't believe that it is a shift towards that. Certainly in medical practices, that is the shift. That's, without a doubt, there aren't individual practitioners anymore. But I think as chiropractors still have this belief that they can just do it on their own. And as time goes on, they recognize this benefit of working together.
Right. And you can do it on your own, yet, particular to our heart is developing highly profitable pay scales for associate doctors to come in and associate with doctors that are incredibly lucrative at what they do is a wise way to go. We did research about 5 years ago to understand what's the likely number of chiropractic practices in the history of the profession that have ever been opened. And one of the ways I started pioneering how to research this was I started to talk to malpractice companies and colleges and get data on the likely track records of graduates. And the closest estimate that I was able to draw from a lot of elders in the profession was that there's a minimum of 300 to somewhere possibly even north of 400,000 chiropractic practices that have been opened. And if doctors were stewarded and trained to never let their office close, that they built legacy driven practices so that those practices never close, then we'd have the maturity of being a profession built on rock, wherein every outbound graduating doctor has a place to go and be stewarded into and take over and then further that story a whole nother generation and another generation. So our dream is that the legacy driven practice could be something we encourage the existing chiropractors to build as legacy driven stories so that then we stop needing to fraternize with these ideas that we have to franchise or we have to get out of school with 300,000 in debt and then pay, sign a contract for $1 million. A lot of kids are coming out of school signing $1 million contracts that they are obligated to pay $1 million over 10 years to own the practice they're in. I mean, it's just insanity. So our advocacy now that we see happening a lot because a lot of TLC doctors are employing associates earning $100,000, $125,000, $150,000 a year as associates. If we foster a better maturity of a legacy driven story, we could fix a lot of the ills that our profession sees, I think. So rather than, concerned with whether it's group practice, not group practice, we are wise to help our young be stewarded to successfully do independent practice with other chiropractors spinning off over time.
so I have to ask, when did you guys meet? How did this love story happen?
Oh boy.
Cobb Civic Center.
Yep.
Cobb Civic Center.
We were both on a every single day athletic journey. I would swim about 3/4 of a mile every day, and Dean would lift weights. And so we were in the same venue on a daily basis. But one particular day, I decided before I went to swim, I would go in and weigh myself.
Always waiter.
I had a scale in the weight room.
You had to
Not
walk
in
in where the dudes are doing.
So yeah, there were women there too. So I would walk in, and it's just a funny story because Dean started talking to me, and I'm standing there in my bathing suit wanting to go swim, and he's talking to me, and I put my hand on the machine and not realizing it was greasy, and he was observing that I did something that what he realized was not ideal, and he kind of just smiled, and I was like, "Well, you didn't even tell me."
It wasn't until
Wow.
she touched something else and she was putting grease on it. It's like,
And he's
Yeah.
laughing.
what am I going to say? Hey,
So,
nothing
so
on
your first encounter was like a little greasy?
I thought you were going to say you were coming out of the water in slow motion as the
Oh, yeah.
lake
Yeah,
glistened
oh,
and
sorry. Yeah.
So we were a couple of quarters apart, and by the time we graduated, we were 1 quarter apart, and that was 1987, 88. And we've been working together, raising babies together.
Our first date, I got to say this, our first date, having a sandwich on the Marietta Square, this little place called Nina's, we had a napkin and we started drawing the design of our ideal practice on date.
Well, if I was going to trust her for a second date, I had to hear some of her ideas about how she did.
I had a goals and I had to be able to write it out.
And I said, well, let's start writing some of this on this napkin. And we started picking the music that was going to play, the lighting that would be there, the clinical elements of what we
We
would do.
didn't even know we had date 2, but we started talking about the practice.
Yeah.
So where did TLC come in then?
Well, about
Well,
7 years in practice, we had already been through several management groups that once we got behind the black curtain, they were very disturbing. It was sad. One group would be great at insurance and billing and compliance, but behind the black curtain, there was no presence of clinical grit or philosophical might or a why that was compelling. And then you'd be with groups that were philosophically compelling, and when you get behind the black curtain, they're collecting $8 a visit. Or you get to another group that seem to have the two of those elements together, but then you find the leaders are sleeping with their customers or clients. And it just, everywhere we went, one group we became an integral part of. In the middle of the night, they sold it to a franchise banking company back in 1989 or something like that, 90. So it was very disturbing. And we started to see that raising $1 million a year practice, not that the money matters, but just money's just an outcropping of evidence of what can be. We're living this incredibly beautiful life. And all these living rooms that we were in were tragically flawed. We said, you know what are the 5 most critical things we think are missing in all of this? And one was protection of marriage and family. Another one was the balance that compliance doesn't have to mean you're a knucklehead about the philosophy and grit of the profession. So we wanted compliance with philosophical might. We wanted team-driven practices that ultimately raised up the relevance that if you're not here to really raise up the careers of other, your own career doesn't belong. And I forget what the 5th one was.
congruency.
Congruency
And accountability.
well, that's right. To hold people accountable and stewardship. Right.
Yep.
So once we came up with those 5 elements, we said, well, can we identify a group that has really mastered those 5 elements? And we couldn't. So we said, then we have to do it. So
And we were accustomed to having a lot of people doing our practice.
So all these other groups always put us on the cover of their magazines, or they put us up on stage saying, see, this is what our company teaches. And
one other thing, in addition to our practice, we had become very integrally connected with the Institutes for Achieving Human Potential, where they work with brain injured kids around the world. And since we had a child who went through a traumatic illness and thought he was going to have brain injury, we, delved into studying that, and that model of having care plans for 5 years, 10 years, and recognizing that we as chiropractors often are very short-sighted of that people have subluxations and it's going to be the rest of their lives that they're going to need to care for it. So it really motivated us to say, wait a second, let's not play small. Let's
to be
really
specific,
deliver.
what motivated us was as we were working with brain injured children, and the founders of the whole movement from Tokyo, from
Italy.
and the US started staying at our house and started living with us and doing things. We would see them literally write 5-year care plans that were medically congruent. They had medical doctors on board. And we were like, what a bunch of knuckleheads chiropractors are talking about 6 weeks or 12-week care plans. But then we realized, well, chiropractors in that medium, we're talking about treatment plans. We need to help people be liberated into writing care plans. So then we started becoming authorities of a voice even compliance officers weren't talking about, that treatment and care is not the same. So we started rendering journals and articles and initiatives about that early on because of this work with brain injury development. So needless to say, a lot of people would come to hear us speak at other people's platforms, and that also led to us kind of having an automatic shoe-in to starting some coaching. And a lot of people come and live with us for a week or 2 weeks with their brain injured kids. We had a big house, and it was kind of like a homeschooling mecca. She delivered all 3 of our kids in the living room. She delivered the 3rd one underwater. So our whole way of living as we jokingly say, if you cut us in half and look up both sides, we're full of chiropractic, we're full of vitality. This is
Love
how
that.
we live our lives, and this is how we
Yeah.
approach marriage and everything. So,
Would you say that the challenges of chiropractors coming out of school today are different than a couple decades ago?
I would say no. I would say they're the same opportunities. I love to reframe the word challenges or problems, the word opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to grow. It's an opportunity for us to recognize that enriching the individual will strengthen them to be able to sustain a practice, to start out in practice. I mean, we started out in practice, we had enough money to live for 3 months, which was the money that we got from our wedding, and that was it. So, the
and we
challenges are
both
still
had
there.
maxed out student loans, so we had
Right.
doubled
Yeah.
indemnity on the student loans.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think the problems that you say or the opportunities, as we say, are different. I think the dressing is different. The dressing looks different, and people like to think, "Oh, well, my situation's different. My problems are different. These times are different." And it's been the same issue for civilization throughout the beginning of recorded history. Men and women struggle to be true to themselves.
Mm.
Men and women struggle to pursue faith over what's visible.
Well,
Men and women struggle to work really, 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 really hard and not ask for when you get a break. All right. You don't get a
well,
break.
I love, what our colleague, Dr. Peter McCullough, said at one of our seminars. The chiropractors should be the ones leading the way in this post-COVID time period. And why aren't we recognizing like people are looking for a different alternative way to address healthcare than what they have realized has flaws in it, to say it mildly.
Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the early things that helped us, I'm going to go back and answer your question again. One of the things that helped us found TLC was what I saw as profound recovery, evidence of recovery in our culture through 12-step programs. All right. So I have a lot of recovered alcoholics in my family. I have friends that are recovered narcotics addicts. And the 12-step program is a program wherein everyone works the steps and everyone is stewarded or sponsored. You have a sponsor as you do the steps. And then eventually, in processing the steps, you become a sponsor to someone else beginning the steps. But then everybody has to do the steps, they have to do the work. And no one owns the 12-step program, but everyone buys into the 12-step program. So I wanted to create a chiropractic coaching community wherein everyone had to work the steps, but in working the steps, you were then being held accountable by a sponsor or a coach in the steps, only so that eventually you master the steps enough. So then you're responsible to sponsor someone else beginning the steps. And so this rhythm of accountability and virtue is what I wanted to put forth in TLC. And now, more than 2,000 chiropractors later, that's what's out there.
Mm.
They are all holding each other accountable. It is the most dollar efficient system out there. It is all about the virtue of accountability and participation in community over stuff, objects, and shiny moments.
Mm.
And so the starting of TLC, we believe, was something that the drought in our profession drew out of us.
Mm.
Right?
So,
Mhm.
in the education of chiropractors,
Mm.
what have you seen different as the students are graduating now versus when you graduated and in between?
Aside from the cost.
Yeah.
There you go.
Do I get into who's teaching?
Let me do this
Yeah.
because you'll get so passionate and we'll spend another hour on this subject. That's one of our passions, to be immersed in the educational system, to be able to influence what they're getting exposed to so that they can learn while they're students, so that they can graduate and really have the tools to practice sustainably and profitably. And we've had some level of success of doing that in a couple of the schools. And it is our heart's desire that all schools would allow a group as purist as we are to help the students, because they're not getting the business education. They're not learning. I mean, our daughter's in ninth quarter at Light. She's not having to do any workshops. When we went to school, we had to do workshops.
Every
We had to do workshops every week, and we had to practice how we communicate in chiropractic. When we went to school, we had to take x-rays. We had to mark x-rays. We had to do things. So there's been a lot of changes in the standards in the schools and the quantity of adjustments that they have to do. It's just upsetting to us recognizing what students need and what they're getting and what they're paying for. And then the quality of the teachers that really, it would be great if they had teachers that were passionate and successful in practice and really
Well, what if
striving to.
what if the requirement for schools was at least 80% of the academic faculty has to have been in practice 30 years? No discredit to someone who hasn't been in practice 30 years, but I want 80% of my faculty to have lived through the sweat of staying married, paying their bills, supporting their kids, keeping it together 30 years. And then you get to stand in front of a podium and teach our newborns.
It's not uncommon for someone to graduate from chiropractic school and then ask to be stayed on and teach.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
so one of the challenges is making sure the culture in the school really breeds that incredible grit of a lot of experience and other things that could happen. If you go to physical therapy school, you can't even apply until you've voluntarily worked 100 hours in a physical therapy clinic. We could, again, putting the hands-on grit of chiropractic experience into the chiropractic academics.
And so, in thinking about TLC, first I want to say that it's been a wonderful affiliation and partnership that we've had from Tools of Practice. I mean, we are very blessed. I want to ask, because as a person of faith, and you mentioned faith yourself, how how is it that, or how do you rely on faith for your marriage and for TLC and for, you know, uh, supporting these chiropractors?
Well, the one non-negotiable in our TLC community is the a profession of the power that made the body heals the body. So we don't profess it has to be the expression, the same exact expression of that power. But if people are not congruently willing to recognize that you are not the powerful one of achieving the healing in the person's body, it wouldn't be a congruent community to be a part of. So what we personally profess, everybody is aware of. We have women's prayer, men's prayer. We are very open with sharing that. And we want to be very welcoming because we don't want to exclude people that don't profess the same faith, because that's our opportunity to be amidst people and to be the light. And
Well,
there's a lot of people that.
the irony is anything that anyone does requires a faith that the steps you're taking are true. And no more evident a place than in science. Science is completely about believing in things you can't really necessarily know are true. Quite often.
I'm enjoying this book that Peter McCullough and John Leake just wrote about vaccines. And they're talking about how ironic it is that the medical community, vaccine community knows without a doubt, 100% clarity that vaccines don't cause autism. But they, on the other side, cannot tell even 5 criteria of things that are causing it. But how could they have complete faith that it's not at all possible that it's related to a vaccine?
Well, that's a faith
So
project.
I know that's why I'm
Yeah.
saying it exactly,
That's their
because
religion.
that is what they live by.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Well, that's true throughout history in science, that you start to realize, wow, so that was really a belief in something unseen to have proclaimed that red dye number 2 was okay, or Agent Orange wouldn't have collateral damage for us, or, a litany of other times science has been shown to be completely wrong, right? So,
So
So,
how it works in our relationship? I
yeah.
mean, we're married 38 years and together 44 or so. We couldn't do this, work together every single day, be together, enjoy our incredible family if we didn't have that faith. Going through challenges in our life, in physical challenge, financial challenges, property challenges, if we didn't have that faith, that was the assurance of we're brought together for a reason and a purpose, and it's way beyond our being comfortable.
from kids that, everybody's got their stuff. And I think sometimes transparency in a slightly risky level is useful, but mean, we've had to process our marriage through the course of a kid wanting to take his life and engage in suicide. We've lived through all sorts of things you guys do, tax audits, Blue Cross audits, and things like that. We've lived through employees that want to do a mutiny. We've lived through, I don't know. We could sit here. I don't say any of this for a wow complaining. I'm just saying life is messy. And if we're not clear about why we're here and what we're doing
and who we're
serving and what we're serving, Einstein said in the end, and it's interesting the quotes he's most publicly known for, but this quote is out there. It'd be good to acknowledge it perhaps as his greatest quote. All I want to know at this point is God's thoughts. All the rest has just been details. That was one of his closing quotes. So, and I believe that's like the final element of writing a metaphorical story about what happens when true scientists really process science their whole lives, is they are so clear about all that is so awestruck in our soul that we have to understand we are not the final authority. We are a participant in something far mightier than ourselves.
Well said. So as we wrap things up, I want to say a few things. One, if you like what you hear, which I love, you guys, every time we talk, you can go to TLC, the number 4, u.life. That's a wonderful place to start. When you're thinking about your ideal chiropractic partner who comes to TLC, do you have, we just did an episode on, being an excellent patient. And so popped in my mind, like, do you have an excellent client or an excellent TLC partner?
Yeah, we love talking about that. That's the avatar. Who is our ideal avatar? And so the first quality of the person that we look for is somebody who is seeking, who is hungry, and who recognizes there's more. There's more to whatever cycle of their life they're in, whether they're a student, whether they've been in practice 40 years. We love the people that have been in practice for a long period of time that are saying, you know what, there's something more. I want to be more in love with chiropractic. So that they're hungry and that the second one is that they're open to seeing value in community, because we don't want to just work individually. We recognize the power of the community. So if the person is open to being on calls or being at events and recognizing that we all have something to contribute and we all grow when we're in community. So those are my 2 top ones.
That they want to have a legacy-driven practice.
I love that.
Seriously, when I watch what happens when host doctors early in their career, not late in their career, early in their career, start to comprehend what it's like to get an associate, what it's like to be able to take 2-week and 4-week vacations every year and live a life. When we get doctors to do that by their 10th year in practice, their longevity and their focus on perhaps living with legacy is at a whole different standard. So it's just the right amount of like proper doses of humility, teachability, their hunger, and that they balance it with this edge to constantly look at growth. We have a law that we talk about in TLC. It's the law of 4 to 6. All right. The universe we live in will take increased morsels out of our income every year through inflation to the tune of 2, 3, 4% a year. So if you're not growing 4, 5, 6% every year, then you're not outpacing the hunger of the world we live in. So we're responsible to grow. All right. And all doctors of chiropractic are responsible to grow. And it's very common after 5, 6, 7 years of opening their doors, they stop growing. But their overhead doesn't stop growing. And so by 15 years or so, there's this struggle that goes on. And we love to see chiropractors that are hungry. I like that.
I love that.
Nicely said. Yeah.
Like I think of you doctors, and I think of TLC, and I'm saying, for our doctors out there listening, if you need to ignite that passion or throw some gasoline on the passion you have and if you're seeking, we've been to these TLC events and we see not only the community and the love, but the passion that can really create the inferno. So when you go back on Monday morning, it's not the same old thing, right? It's not the workshop junkie that just keeps going and never changes. anything when they get
And
back.
we're accountable to you guys. I mean, we're in the front line of practice. I'm a practicing doctor of chiropractic. She's adjusting. She's an adjusting doctor of chiropractic. We have 2 associates downstairs right now that are adjusting in the front line. So we're responsible to TOPS. We have a compliance program through TOPS. So anything all of us talk about is not from the ivory tower or something we did 10 or 20 years ago. We are in the trenches of what we do right now.
I'm going to loop
Okay.
back to what you said about the germination of TLC and say that you guys walk the walk. It isn't just talk, right? I didn't mean that to rhyme, but it did. Hey, all right. Yeah, so I'm really impressed with that. And I just want to, again, just say how grateful we are to be affiliated with you, be partners with you, but also for your time today. I love getting to know you more. It's really been a treat. I'm sure we'll explore that relationship more, but we want to just thank you so much for being here today, Dr. Jen and
Thank
Dr.
you.
Dean DePice from TLC.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks again for listening to another episode of All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
I'm Dr. Mark Davini.
Thanks for listening to All Things Chiropractic. We'd love to hear from you. Visit allthingschiropractic.com with comments, episode ideas, or questions. Or connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at All Things Chiropractic Podcast. Be sure to join Dr. Mark Davini and Paul Andrews next time for another episode of All Things Chiropractic.